Hebrews chapter 12 is a powerful chapter in the New Testament that encourages us to persevere through difficult times by keeping our eyes fixed on Jesus. Here is a brief summary of the chapter. Verse 1 to 2. The chapter begins by encouraging us to run the race of faith with perseverance, looking to Jesus as our example and the author and perfecter of our faith. Verses 3 to 11. The author reminds us that God disciplines us for our good, just as a father disciplines his children. This discipline is not always pleasant, but it produces a harvest of righteousness and peace in our lives. Verses 12 to 13. The author encourages us to strengthen our feeble arms and weak knees, and to make straight paths for our feet, so that we may not stumble on the way. Verses 14 to 17. The author reminds us to pursue peace and holiness, and warns against bitterness and immorality, which can defile us and disqualify us from God's grace. Verses 18 to 24. The author contrasts the old covenant of the law with the new covenant of grace, reminding us that we have come to Mount Zion, the heavenly Jerusalem, through Jesus. Verses 25 to 29. The author warns us not to refuse God, who speaks to us through his Son, and reminds us that God is a consuming fire. Overall, Hebrews chapter 12 encourages us to endure in our faith and to fix our eyes on Jesus, who is our ultimate source of strength, hope, and salvation. Philippians chapter 4 is a powerful chapter in the New Testament that encourages us to rejoice in the Lord always and to be anxious for nothing. Here is a brief summary of the chapter. Verses 1 to 3. The chapter begins with Paul encouraging the Philippian believers to stand firm in the Lord and to live in harmony with one another. Verses 4 to 7. Paul then encourages the believers to rejoice in the Lord always, to be gentle, and to not be anxious about anything. Instead, they are to pray with thanksgiving, and the peace of God, which transcends all understanding, will guard their hearts and minds in Christ Jesus. Verses 8 to 9. Paul encourages the believers to focus their thoughts on whatever is true, noble, right, pure, lovely, admirable, excellent, or praiseworthy, and to put into practice what they have learned and received from him. Verses 10 to 13. Paul thanks the Philippians for their partnership in the gospel and for their support of his ministry. He also encourages them that he can do all things through Christ who strengthens him. Verses 14 to 20. Paul expresses his gratitude for the Philippians' generosity towards him and assures them that God will supply all their needs according to his riches in glory in Christ Jesus. Verses 21 to 23. Paul sends greetings to the believers in Philippi and reminds them of God's grace that is with them. Overall, Philippians chapter 4 encourages us to rejoice in the Lord always, to be anxious for nothing, and to focus our thoughts on whatever is true, noble, right, pure, lovely, admirable, excellent, or praiseworthy. We can do all things through Christ who strengthens us, and God will supply all our needs according to his riches in glory in Christ Jesus.